Genesis chapter 28. Jacob sent to Laban. Then Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and directed him, "You must not take a wife from the Canaanite women. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take as your wife from there one of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. And Almighty God bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may become a company of people. May he give you the blessing of Abraham. May he give the blessing of Abraham to you and to your offspring with you, that you may take possession of the land of your sojourners that God gave Abraham." Thus Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Padan Aram, to Laban, the son of Bethuel, the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob and Esau's mother. Esau marries an Ishmaelite. Now Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan Aram to take a wife from there, and that as he blessed him, he directed him, "You must not take a wife from the Canaanite woman," and that Jacob had obeyed his father and his mother and gone to Padan Aram. So when Esau saw that the Canaanite woman did not please Isaac his father, Esau went to Ishmael and took as his wife, beside the wives he had, Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Nebaioth, Jacob's dream. Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran, and he came to a certain place and stayed there that night, because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, "I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and God of Isaac. And the land on which you lie I will give to you and your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in you your offspring shall all the families of earth be blessed. Behold, I'm with you and will keep you wherever you go, and I'll bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it." And he was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." So early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on top of it, and he called the name of this place Bethel. But the name of the city was Luz at the first. When Jacob made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me and will keep me in the way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. And all that you give me, I will give a full tenth to you." Matthew chapter 27. Jesus delivered to Pilate. When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. And they bound him and led him away and delivered him over to Pilate the governor. Judas hangs himself. Then when Judas his betrayer saw that Jesus was condemned, he changed his mind and brought back 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood." They said, "What is that to us? See it to yourself." And throwing down the pieces of silver in the temple, he departed, and went and hanged himself. But the chief priests, taking the piece of silver, said, "It is not lawful to put them into the treasury. This is blood money." So they took counsel and brought with them the potter's field of burial place for strangers. Therefore the field that has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, saying, "And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the piece of him on whom a price had been set by some of the sons of Israel, and they gave them for a potter's field, as the Lord directed me." Jesus before Pilate. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said, "You have said so." But when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many things they testify against you?" But he gave him no answer, not even a single charge. So the governor was greatly amazed. The crowd chooses Barabbas. Now at the feast the governor was accustomed to release for the crowd any one prisoner whom they wanted. But they had then a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?" For he knew that it was out of envy that they had delivered him up. Besides, while he was sitting on judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much because of him today in my dream." Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor again said to them, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And he said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what shall I do with Jesus who is called Christ?" And they said, "Let him be crucified." And he said, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they all shouted all more, "Let him be crucified." Pilate delivers Jesus to be crucified. Then when Pilate saw that he was gaining nothing, and rather that the riot was beginning, he took water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I'm innocent of this man's blood. See it to yourselves." And all the people answered, "His blood be on us and our children." Then he released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, delivered him to be crucified. Jesus is mocked. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered a whole battalion up before him, and they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and twisted together crown of thorns. They put it on his head, and put a reed on his right hand, and kneeling before him, they mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they spit on him, and took the reed, and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the robe, and put his own clothes on him, and led him away to be crucified. The crucifixion. As they went out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name, and they compelled this man, to carry the cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull, they offered him wine to drink mixed with gall, but when he tasted it, he could not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his garment among them, and by casting lots. Then they sat down and kept watch over him. And over his head they put a charge against him that read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left. And those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads, and saying, "You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." So also the chief priests that were the scribes and elders mocked him, saying, "He saves others, he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now, if he desires him." For he said, "I am the Son of God." And the robbers who were crucified with him also reviled him in the same way. The death of Jesus. Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani," and that is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And some of the bystanders hearing said, "This man is calling Elijah." And one of them ran again and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed, and gave it to him to drink. But the other said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him." And Jesus cried again with a loud voice, and yielded up his spirit. And behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two, from top to bottom, and the earth shook, and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. When the centurion and those who were with him, keeping watch over Jesus, saw the earthquake and what took place, they were filled with awe and said, "Truly, this was the Son of God." They were also many women there looking on from a distance who had followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him, among whom were Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. Jesus is buried. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it to be given to him, and Joseph took the body and wrapped it up in a clean linen shroud and laid it in his new tomb, which he had cut on the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the entrance of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there, sitting opposite the tomb. The guard at the tomb. The next day, that is the day after the preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, "Sir, remember how the impostor said, while he was still alive, 'After 3 days I will rise.' Therefore order the tomb to be made secure until the third day, lest his disciples go and steal him away and tell the people he has risen from the dead. And the last fraud will be the worse than the first." And Pilate said, "You have a guard of soldiers. Go and make it secure as you can." So they went and made the tomb secure by sealing the stone and setting a guard. Esther chapter 4. Esther agrees to help the Jews. Then Mordecai learned all that had been done. Mordecai tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the midst of the city. And he cried out with a loud, bitter cry, and went up to the entrance of the king's gate, for no one was allowed to enter the king's gate clothed in sackcloth. And in every province, wherever the king commanded and his decree reached, there was a great mourning among the Jews, with fasting and weeping and lamenting, and many of them lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Esther's young women and her eunuchs came and told us, the queen was deeply distressed. She sent garments to clothe Mordecai so that he might take off his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther called for Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, and he had been appointed to attend her, and ordered him to go to Mordecai to learn what this was and why it was. Hathach went out to Mordecai in an open square of the city, in front of the king's gate, and Mordecai told him all that had happened to him, and the exact sum of money that Haman had promised to pay into the king's treasures for the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai also gave him a copy of a written decree issued in Susa for their destruction, and he might show it to Esther and explain it to her, and command her to go to the king to beg for his favor and plead with him on behalf of her people. And Hathach went and told Esther what Mordecai had said. Esther spoke to Methach and commanded him to go to Mordecai and say, "All the king's servants and the people of the king's province know that if any man or woman goes to the king inside or inner court without being called, there is but one law, to put him to death, except the one who the Lord holds out the golden scepter so that he may live. And as for me, I have not been called to come in the king for these 30 days. And they went to Mordecai and they told Mordecai what Esther had said. When Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, "Do not think to yourself that in the king's face you will escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. Who knows whether you have not come to kingdom for such a time as this?" And Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, "Go, gather all the Jews to be found in Susa, and hold a fast on my behalf. Do not eat or drink for 3 days or nights. I and my young woman will also fast as you do. When I go to the king, though it is against the law, if I perish, I perish." Mordecai then went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him. Acts chapter 27. Paul sails to Rome, and when it was decided that we should sail for Italy, they delivered Paul and some other prisoners to the centurion of Augustine cohort, named Julius, and embarking in the ship of Adramyttium, which was about to sail to the ports along the coast of Asia, we put to sea, accompanied by Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica. The next day we put in at Sidon, and Julius treated Paul kindly and gave him to leave to go to his friends and be cared for. And putting out to sea from there, he sailed under the lee of Cyprus, because the winds were against us. And when we had sailed across the open sea along the coast of Syria and Pamphylia, we came to Myra in Lycia, and there was centurion found a ship of Alexandria sailing for Italy, and put us on board. We sailed slowly for a number of days and arrived there with difficulty of Cnidus. And as the wind did not allow us to go further, we sailed under the lee of Crete of Samon. Coasting along with it with difficulty, we came to a place called Fair Havens, near which was the city of Latia. Since much time has passed, and the voyage is now dangerous because even the fast was already over, Paul advised them, saying, Sirs, I perceive that the voyage will be with injury and much loss, not only of the cargo and the ship, but also our lives. But the centurion paid more attention to the pilot and to the other owner of the ship than what Paul said. And because the harbor was not suitable to spend the winter in, the majority decided to put out to sea from there on the chance that somehow they would reach Phoenix, a harbor of Crete, facing both southward and northward, and spend the winter there. The storm at sea. Now when the south wind blew gently, supposing that they had obtained their purpose, they weighed anchor and sailed along Crete, close to the shore. But soon a tempestuous wind called the northeaster struck down from the land, and when the ship was caught and could not face the wind, they gave way to it and were driven away, running under the lee of a small island called Cauda, which we managed with difficulty to secure the ship's boat. After hoisting it up, we used the support to undergird the ship. Then, fearing that they would run around a guard on the surface, we lowered the gear, and thus we were driven along. Since we were violently storm-tossed, we began the next day to jettison the cargo. And on the third day they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope of our being saved was at last abandoned. Since they had been without food for a long time, Paul stood up among them and said, Men, you should have listened to me, and not have set sail from Crete, and incurred this injury and loss. Yet now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. For this was very for this very night there stood before me an angel of God, to whom I belong, and whom I worship. And he said, Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand before Caesar, and behold, God has granted you all those who sail with you. So take heart, men, for I have faith in God that it will be exactly as I have been told. But we must run a guard to some island. When the 14th night had come, as we were being driven across the Adriatic Sea, about midnight the sailors suspected that they were nearing land. So they took a standing and found 20 fathoms. A little further, as they took a sounding again and found 15 fathoms. And fearing that we might run on rocks, they let down 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for day to come. And as the sailors were seeking to escape from the ship, and had lowered the ship's boat under the pretense of laying out anchors from the bows, Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, Unless these men stay in the ship, we cannot be saved. Then the soldiers cut away the ropes of the boat's ship, ship's boat, and let it go. And as day was about to dawn, Paul urged them all to take some food, saying, Today is the 14th day, and you have continued in suspension without food, having taken nothing. Therefore I urge you to take some food, for it will give you strength. For not a hair is to perish from the head of any of you. And when he had said these things, he took bread, and giving thanks to God in the presence of all, he broke it and began to eat. Then they all were encouraged and ate food themselves. We were in all 276 persons in the ship. And when they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship, throwing out the wheat into the sea. The shipwreck. Now when it was day, they had not recognized the land, but they noticed the bay with the beach. So they planned, if possible, to run the ship ashore As they cast off the anchors and left them in the sea, at the same time loosening the ropes, they tied the rudders. Then, hoisting the foresail to the wind, they made for the beach. But striking the reef, they ran a vessel aguard. A bow struck and remained unmovable, and the stern was being broken up by a surf. The soldiers' plan was to kill the prisoners, lest any should swim away and escape. But the centurion, wishing to save Paul, kept them from carrying out their plan, and ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and make for the land, and the rest of the planks and on pieces of the ship, so that it was all they were brought safe. So it was that all were brought safely to land.